G'day everyone. I thought I would do a video and welcome to 2026. Today's video is going to be an overview of the Fragged Aeternum lore. Not going to go into a super deep dive into all the nitty gritty of it, but wanting to give some sort of broad strokes, show off some art, what we're working on. And for those who are interested, we're of course moving into Fragged Aeternum 2 is being developed at the moment. But the lore is going to be pretty much the same as first edition in terms of the world, but I'm kind of expanding some bits, adding some new types of monsters. But I don't feel the need to change the bones of the lore. I think it's pretty much spot on. Yeah, but before I jump into that, a couple of things. Frag Kingdom 2, it's getting there. So obviously, the rules in the setting book's been out for ages, but the thing that's been holding me up is putting the final touches in the adventure and some printing quantities and some shipping stuff. Yeah, things get a little bit tricky with the US and the EU a little bit, so just sort of sorting that out. But unfortunately, like the whole train doesn't move until every single bit is just right. But I'm hoping to be able to go to print next month. We'll see how we go. I'm most likely going to open up the pledge manager again for like a final week or something like that. But stay tuned. I'll send out an email via my email list, and I'll post up on social media when I do that. Yeah. Frag Cosmos, the board game, developing really well. We've made some really good leaps and bounds in terms of the rules and the layout. Actually, this picture here is not even the most up-to-date version of how things look, but I'm so excited about this game. I think the rules are really, really, really cool. When we gonna go to crowdfunding, I don't know. Like, I'm gonna aim for the end of the year, but at the same time, like, it'll be one of those. It'll be ready when it's ready. If you would like to help me playtest this, jump onto the Discord, because I'm hoping to get back into the swing and running some digital playtest sessions through Tabletop Simulator, and of course, if you want to jump onto the Fragged Aeternum playtest, currently that's just for Patreon supporters at the moment only. Yeah. Okay. The other one is Double Tap. So obviously, Double Tap is out. Okay. If you're in Australia, you can buy this right now via my web store. If you're from another country, send me a direct message or something, and I'll see what I can sort out. But yeah, very happy with that. I'm going to CanCon at the end of this month. In fact, this year I'm hoping to do a lot of sort of miniature war game conventions here in Australia. The war gamers are cool in terms of their clubs and their little activities and tournaments and little mini conventions and markets. So that's really nice. Looking forward to connecting with more people on that front. Cool. Okay, let's jump into Fragged Aeternum. Okay, so for those of you who are unfamiliar with Fragged Aeternum, this is my gothic horror setting where it's very different to my other games because the player characters are a specific group of people. They are the tethered, which are these people who have bound their souls to the great lantern with the golden flame, and they come back to life. Like, so when they die, they turn into a spectre and they can be reborn and stuff like that. And it's kind of like gothic superheroes in terms of like, people are this powerful, you're this powerful, and you fight things this powerful type of thing. Lot of fun to GM. If you like killing your player characters, then this is a great game. It's a lot of over-the-top super weapons, and yeah, it's great. I'm really looking forward to that. And the new art for this, as you can see, is just taking this up to another level. Okay, so first thing is Aeternum. What is Aeternum? So Aeternum is the name of the city. It is the Endless City. It is the city that goes on forever in every direction. And when a building in Aeternum crumbles or falls to ruin, um, after a time, a divine beings called the architects, these little architects, will come along and basically manifest a new building in its spot, over the rubble and the ruins of the old building. So not only does the city go forever in every direction, it's also built on the ruins of the endless city. So a quote here that I've got in my book: after 10,000 generations of each walk 10 billion years towards the horizon, they shall stand no closer to the city's edge than whence they began. Okay, so this here is one of the new maps that I'm working on. Um, so this is, of course, just one particular slice of Aeternum. And these here, these sort of nations, they're called districts. So each district is, yeah, it's like a nation, and it has a wall around it. Um, and the particular game's default setting is set within the district of Strigham here, which is known for its particularly large buildings. Okay, so and this whole region, it's never perfectly defined, was once ruled by the Rune Empire. Um, they were basically had all these Magitech golems, and the golems went nuts after their empress tried to become a tethered and failed. And then out of the ruins of that empire, all these little individual districts all sort of popped up a bit here. So some world building stuff here. So the reason I sort of put the Rune Empire there as sort of this ancient history is it sort of adds a little bit of a binding mechanism between the different districts in the area. So a reason for them to share history, share sort of a bit of a language together. So they're not so completely disconnected from each other. Also, they all share this ancestral pain of sort of coming out of the empire and rediscovering their independence. And it sort of all puts them all on a bit of an equal footing, which I think is good for creating story, facilitating your player characters to be able to travel anywhere. Now, of course, if you travel further from Strigham, like I've purposely put them on the side of the map, so if you head this way, that could be anything. So a GM can just go nuts and put whatever they want here. But if they head this way, there's some stuff here that can sort of get the imagination flowing. And a lot of these things is things that I'm not necessarily going to define. Like, what is this giant fiendish skull here? And why is this district lower? What's all these canals going on over here in this district? Why are there giant swords up here? What is this crater? Although the crater is explained a little bit in the book because it's closer. Okay, then you jump in with this is a zoomed in part of Strigham here and a little bit of its neighbors. Again, I've done that whole, I have it mapped out to the right, and this is so as the GMs can have 100% creativity in terms of what is there, and then highlighted a few specific spots that sort of get fleshed out in the book. If you have the Greyberg Market, which is one of my first edition books, you're going to get a massive detailed deep dive into this section here. Yeah. Okay, so just flicking through some art here. My notes. Okay. Then we have under the city. So as we talked about before, we've got these ruins underneath. In that underneath is called the Undercity. And that's where you've got all these caves and caverns and tunnels and stuff, and the player characters can go in there and they can find whole secret lost civilizations and lost artifacts and ancient ruins. And so if you really want to do that sort of delving type of game, I love the Undercity. It's kind of an excuse that you can pretty much just go down at any point. There might be who knows what's there. The other distinctive thing about Aeternum that's really important to the setting is when a human dies, you can visibly see their soul leave their body. Now, I don't have any new art for this at the moment, but I'm hoping to get something made up. And that soul will float for a moment, and then it will either drift up or be sucked down. Okay, and they call that sort of ascending to the above or descending to the below. Okay, and no one knows what the above is or the below. No one knows the final destinations of these souls, but there is a general consensus and a feeling that going up is sort of good, okay, and going down is to something bad, okay. So sort of a bit of a damnation salvation thing going on, but there's not a consensus as to what leads to a soul going up, and most souls go down. Okay. Um, and in Aeternum, you have these two big sort of spiritual forces. You've got the Celestials above and the Fiends sort of below. Okay. And Fiends are basically just these monsters, these purely evil monsters who curl up from underneath, from below the Undercity sort of thing. Or they can also manifest out of people, or they can sort of appear where there's great deals of suffering. And then you've got Celestials. You've got different types of fiends here. Okay, they can basically be whatever the GM wants. Okay, and there's different types. Like for example, this is the Gobbler, and the Gobbler's got sort of, so they form out of the corpse of a fiend that's mingled with dark magic, and they sort of congeal into these little spheres, and then the spheres grow and they turn into a Gobbler. Okay, working on some new art, some sketches. Then you've got Celestials. Now, I don't have any new art for the Celestials. They are basically these sort of winged angelic type entities, okay? And they come from above. But also, like, Fiends are a lot more common than Celestials in terms of visiting Aeternum. But Celestials are easy to see. For example, the sun is a Celestial. It is a Celestial that rises over there, flies over like clockwork, and then disappears over there. And then the next day it will do the same. Okay? There is a Celestial. If you have the right telescope with the filters, you can look up and you can see it. Okay? And all of the stars are Celestials, okay, floating way off, distant in the sky, okay, and they like to move around sometimes too. Which also, another thing, for example, in Aeternum, you have moons. Aeternum has multiple moons, these big spherical rocks that float around in the sky, and usually they're above the clouds, but sometimes they descend below the clouds, and in very dangerous situations, they also crash into the city. But Celestials are perfectly powerful, okay? Nothing can fight them, nothing can defeat them. They're never wrong. They're always right. And the Fiends are not on equal footing with them at all. Fiends are damned creatures. They know they are damned, and they're just angry and hateful and spiteful and wanting to take as many humans down with them as they can. Okay? And this is, of course, where the Tethered are going to come in to this battle a little bit. We'll get into that later. Then you have, you got different types of Celestials, so like architects, guardians, or different types of divine beings, so who are aligned with the Celestials. You've got architects, guardian spirits, wisps is sort of an example here. Then you have technology. So as we sort of talked about before, you had the Rune Empire were really big on this magic tech, this sort of fusing of technology and magic, and particularly golems. So in Stringham, war golems are outlawed. Okay, these are sort of these monstrous things. So like, if you get a bit tired of your players fighting fiends, you can throw in some giant robots for them to do, or some weird technology going on, mad scientists and stuff like that. You've got some flying ships and stuff like that mixed in well. The technology is very broad within Aeternum, in that you've got that kind of, that sort of Victorian era stuff, but also knights and castles. You've got technology and magic, and then sometimes they fuse and sometimes they're apart. It's a little bit in that Aeternum's also a little bit technologically stuck, mostly because the architects just sort of rebuild stuff so they may create an advanced society, but then one of their big fancy buildings fall down, and then the new resources are the castle put there. You know, um, then you've got, I won't go into details too much. Then you've got animals. So of course, there's a big bunch of uh, dangerous beasts and creatures within the world. So a curious feature is that with the waterways, the architects don't really pay attention to what humans want or desire or kind of what's sensible or logical in where they build stuff. And so, even underneath rivers and giant lakes and small oceans, they will just put buildings, they'll just plonk them down. And so, underneath all of these waterways, there's more buildings, okay? Um, they look like they're designed for humans, but no human lives there. Okay, we'll get to the Burfeet people later on. Uh, and one of the big ones, of course, is the River Strigham. Oh wait, no, Scarsbourne River, which is this is an illustration of here. And then you've also got parklands and farmlands. So sometimes you have some areas designated by the architects as sort of farmlands, and this is where you get that things grow there, like plants and animal stuff grow at a massive rate. These giant pigs and lots of crops and stuff like that to sort of feed the city. And then the parklands or become really forested and dense, and so you cut the trees down and they'll just grow back, sort of thing. Um, you also have mimics. It's this sort of idea of a creature has evolved to exist within the city. Vermin are really common, stuff like that. The sort of urban animals in a way. Then you have the otherworldly invaders. So there are all these other dimensions with really strange things, like they don't have a city that goes forever. Souls aren't visible, and they're built on giant spherical land masses that are illuminated by giant balls of burning gas. Which is really strange for the people of Aeternum. You have all sorts of weird other dimensions, and sometimes creatures, dangerous creatures, come through from those other dimensions. So the Fae are one of these, for example, but the Fae have been here for so long that they've started to look more humanoid. Um, then you've got the Moonthrin, which are these sort of strange creatures that like to live on the moons, and they like to kidnap scholars, and they're big into knowledge, and they're angry at Aeternum Sky because it's all wrong. Then you have the Outer Kin, which are like these tentacle-faced creatures that like to wear nice suits and stuff like that. And they get quite disgusted by people. And they've got these gods and things that they worship, such as the Queen in Rags. A lot of madness and stuff going on there. You got the kind of eldritch horror stuff going for some of these. Then you got the Infinitrix, which are these tall, gangly, eyeless creatures with the hands that can stretch, but then they have these eyes that float around them that they use to see. And they kidnap people, but we're not really sure why they're kidnapping people. They can also craft doppelgangers to sort of help them with their infiltration missions. But when infiltration time for like subtlety is over, they open these giant green portals and outflow the Hollows, which is basically this sort of horde army of these creatures, humanoid creatures. Then you've got the Jinn, which people kind of get the Jinn a bit here and that. So a smaller entry there. Then the water folk come from other dimensions. You've got different types of water folk. A lot of them are at war with each other. For the Brine Kin and the Mer people don't like each other. Yeah. Okay. Then you have the Undead, which is effectively sort of like the undead of the world. With like necromancers and ghosts and skeletons and things like that. Then we jump into the Tethered. Okay, so this the Tethered, what they are is, they've bound their souls and they're immortal. This is what the play characters are. And the way they bind their souls to the now and become immortal is they effectively go through a ritual and burn themselves up in the golden fire, which is in these giant lanterns. And most people, that just extinguishes them, kills them. But for some of them, which the golden fire selects, we don't know why, come back as these immortal tethered. And the tethered are tasked with protecting human souls. They're basically to go out there, protect humans, stop them from being corrupted by fiends, try to prevent them from being massacred so as they have more time to figure out how to get their souls to go up. That's basically their mission. And the Golden Flame sometimes sends them visions or on missions, but largely they go out and work it out themselves. Another thing about the Tethered Order is that in the past, they were once vast and influential and powerful. You know, they'd have hundreds of servants and this giant training program and stuff to sort of pick at the best candidates to become tethered. But that's all come to ruin and faded away. We don't know whether it was corruption or they were attacked or just what happened there. But now the tethered, they still have their sanctuaries, but most of them have fallen into ruin and the golden flame's gone out. So you can return to those and sort of relight their lantern. But now the tethered they accept anyone. Okay. And so you get a lot of different people becoming tethered. Some of them are heroic, and sort of pure of heart. Some are really just out for vengeance because the fiends did something to someone they love. Or maybe there are a villain or someone who fears their soul going down to the below. And so they just like, well, I want to become immortal so that doesn't happen. And so they join, not really believing in the Tethered's mission or objective, but they'll do it if it means they get to keep their immortality. Okay, and so you can have a great variety of people. This is an example of a sanctuary. And then, so the different types of tethered from a player's perspectives, they have different archetypes. So you've got Apex, Beast, Deranged, Gadgeteer, Heretic, Martyr, Overlord, Pious, Ravenous, Shrewd, Thaumaturge, and Waif. So the two new ones from first edition are the Heretic and the Waif. So the Heretic's kind of the inverse of the Pious, and the Waif is a little bit like the inverse of the Apex. Okay. Yeah, so this is just a sketch art here, so we're still working on this one. It's sort of an example of a Pious character. But this is the sort of characters that you can play as in Aeternum. Typical game is going to involve you getting a mission and going and hunting some bad guys. Okay, so that mission might come from like a local enforcement, like a city guard or something that, oh, he's kind of heard of the tethered, that sometimes you can help with this stuff. Or maybe the Golden Flame sends you a vision or something like that. Yeah. Another important thing about the tethered, so this is a martyr, is that when a tethered dies, they turn into a spectre. And as a spectre, there's a chance of them fading away every turn, but they also gain additional armor and crit damage. They become more powerful while they're a spectre. Then once a spectre fades away, they need to wait till another character resurrects them. And yeah, the martyr archetype loves turning into a spectre. The other thing is tethered all can use arcane power. So arcane power comes in three different forms. So one is celestial. So you're basically praying to the celestials and they may bestow blessing or power or strength or gifts upon you. So a lot of like justice, light, fire sort of vibe going here, very truth sort of stuff. The other type is fiendish, so you can actually draw upon fiendish power. The tethered are very much into using the weapons of the enemy against themselves or making deals with one fiend to defeat another fiend. Of course, this is very dangerous because the person giving them power loves to say yes, but is obviously not on their team. So then the third type is urban. So this is effectively the more sciencey type of magic, or more human arcane type. So it's you taking responsibility for the laws of reality itself and rebending it as you want. So very skill intensive, but if you fail, it can have some very chaotic effects. Tethered, if a tethered ever becomes corrupted or basically falls out of favor with the Golden Flame or rejects the mission or what have you, the Golden Flame could remove their immortality from them. That doesn't mean they disappear. It means they're still out there. They're still going to live forever until they die, until someone kills them. So sometimes tethered fight tethered. And when a tethered is killed by a tethered, including themselves, they don't turn into a specter. That's a very important rule. The other thing is often tethered, if they live for too long, they can basically, humans are not designed to live forever in this mortal world, and so they can sort of lose their humanity, lose their connection to the world, their drive, maybe their mind becomes corrupted. So if they continue down that path, they're obviously going to be cut off from the Golden Flame. But the other thing that can happen is a tether can be reborn and effectively have their memories erased, okay? Which is a kind of a way of having a really old character who's like low level or something like that. Cool. Anyway, I hope you guys found this interesting. It's just a very quick primer, but I'm really looking forward to getting this out into more people's hands. And of course, if you're interested in playing this right now, you can join the Patreon and you get instant access to not only the playtest rules, but all of the lore that I've written. And as I update the lore and the artwork, that'll all be updated there as well. Public playtest, not sure when. Maybe give me 3 or 4 months, I'm thinking. But again, I like to just sort of play things as I sort of vibe through stuff a little bit with this. Cool. Take care. I hope you guys have a great year.